But hey, I know my guys are going to bounce back, and this is the look on their eyes and the tears coming down their face right now is telling me a lot. And we'll build from this, and we'll endure this process and get ready for the next game.
An emotional one. The Owls fell to the Golden Hurricane in one of their most competitive matchups of the season. They came close, but not close enough.
A Tulsa recap with the crazy pregame atmosphere at the sports complex that even had Temple's athletic director impressed.
But the energy here is absolutely incredible. Obviously, go Eagles, they're playing great as well, so for the city, everything's great. Now we need to do our part.
Athletic Director Arthur Johnson wasn't the only Owl impressed with the crazy times at the sports complex on Friday night. I'm Sam Massad, live from the Lincoln Financial Field, and I'll show you what it looks like when Temple football collides with playoff baseball and a rock concert. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome into a new edition of Inside the Nest. She's Emilie Cochran, and I'm Luke Emilie.
Friday night's game was a sad one for Stan Drayen and the Owls. A strong start on the defensive side of the ball wasn't enough to secure the team's first AAC win of the season. After a 57-point loss to UCF, the Owls were back at the Link for their first conference game at home. On Tulsa's very first drive, quarterback Davis Brin throws his first interception of the game directly in the hands of Leighton Jordan. Jordan takes this one 34 yards down the field for Temple's first touchdown of the night. The very next time Brin touches the ball, boom, it's picked off by redshirt freshman and single-digit Jalen McMurray. Following this interception, with the Owls still up 7-0, E.J. Warner almost gets picked off himself. The throw was intended for running back Edward Sadie, and after this play, Temple settles for a field goal. With Temple up 10, Tulsa goes no huddle and completes to Keelan Stokes, the team's #1 receiver, for a 16-yard gain. On the same drive, Brin throws an 18-yard touchdown to Denerick Prince to put the Golden Hurricane on the board. Later in the second quarter, on 3rd and 8, Warner completes a 1-yard pass to Sadie, but Temple was forced to punt the ball for the 4th time during the game. The ball is in the hands of the Golden Hurricane once again. Brin throws an 18-yard completion to Malachi for his first reception of the day. This led to a Tulsa shuffle pass, and Ethan Hall takes it right into the end zone. This was his first touchdown of the season.
That touchdown from Hall gave Tulsa a 14-10 lead that they took into the half, thanks to 14 unanswered points in the second quarter. In the third, the Golden Hurricane went right back to Prince. He runs for 25 yards before being ripped by Jordan McGee. McGee hops on the fumble as well, ensuring Temple's third forced turnover of the night on the ensuing drive. Camden Price misses a 49-yard field goal that would have cut the Tulsa lead to 1. In the fourth quarter, with Tulsa up 7, Prince breaks the game open. The senior running back dashed through the Temple defense untouched en route to an 84-yard touchdown, the longest run Temple has allowed this season. The Owls tried to put together a late comeback. E.J. Warner finds Ahmad Anderson for a 23-yard touchdown to make it a one-possession game. Now Temple tries to go for 2, but after scrambling, Warner can't get the throw off. Tulsa adds a late field goal to give the Owls their third straight loss. The score, 27-16. Temple scored the first 10 points of this game before Tulsa added 24 straight points to storm ahead for good. Golden Hurricane running back Denerick Prince had the game of his life, rushing for over 200 total yards and adding a pair of touchdowns, including the 84-yard run in the fourth quarter that ultimately ended the game. Ahmad Anderson and Edward Sadie produced single-game career high marks for receiving and rushing yards, respectively.
But the positive is, those guys fought. We had a whole bunch of adversity take place during the course of that game, and there's no quitting this team. They're showing me over and over and over that they're willing to go the distance and keep fighting. 2 linemen go down, next man up. We found a way to get the ball in the end zone there.
Anytime you have injuries, it's hard to kind of plug different guys in, try to get a chemistry that way. But my job is just to focus on what I can control, and if I can control in the pass game, watching film, do whatever I need to do to control that, and just stand back there and trust those guys no matter who it is in front of me.
I mean, it just started with practice, like the past, like last week, we all been practicing real hard, especially the offense. So coming in, it wasn't like anything new. We just had to, play our game. We wish we could have put more points up, but it happened.
Now, the thing that stuck out to me in this game from the get-go was Temple's response. Anytime you're coming off a week where you lose by 57 points, it's easy to quit. It's easy to not bring the energy, but Temple did the exact opposite. They brought it from the jump, obviously, those defensive touchdowns or those defensive turnovers. They made a big impact early, and then later in the game, after that big 84-yard run, Temple could have lied down and lost a two-possession game that they fought in, but instead, E.J. Warner leads that touchdown drive to put them right back in the game. It didn't amount to a win, but there was a lot of fight in this Temple team, and Stan Drayton mentioned last week it wasn't an effort issue, and this past game proved it.
And the defense came out strong within the first few minutes of stepping on the field. And that was a goal that Stan Drayton had going into this game. We finally saw glimpses of that Temple defense that we saw in games against Memphis and in games against Rutgers. Specifically, Leighton Jordan had his second career pick six on Tulsa's opening drive. Jordan is the second Temple player since 2015 to have two pick sixes within the same season. So although the overall defense struggled, he really had a great game.
Now, we've given the defense their props, and rightfully so, but we have to focus on the negatives. The Owls got burned in the run game, and this was against a Tulsa team that wasn't a great rushing offense. Tulsa had 299 yards on the ground in this game. And you got to give Tulsa credit because they were a very good passing offense coming into this game. Temple clearly adjusted to that, made them go the other way, and Tulsa proved they could be a two-dimensional team. Now for Temple, it's going to be about adjusting for next week against a team that will be run heavy in Navy.
And you mentioned that the run defense struggled, but there were some younger guys on the defensive side of the ball that stood out and really stepped into their roles. Specifically, freshman Jalen McMurray caught his first career interception. Sophomore Jarian Varner had 3.5 sacks on the day. There has not been this many sacks in a single game since Quincy Roche was at Temple in 2019. So, as you mentioned, the defense struggled, but some of these younger guys really stepped up. Now, this game was Temple's first night game at home since UCF came to the Link in 2019. And with the Phillies playoff game and a rock concert both right across the street, K-Lot was packed with over 50,000 Philadelphia sports fans.
Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massad caught all the action down at the tailgate Friday night. In fact, traffic was so bad, she's still at the Link. Hey, Sam.
Hey Luke, this place was fully packed only a few days ago. It was full of eager Owls and Phillies fans looking for that important win, but also some music lovers as well. I got to speak to a few fans and a familiar face to see how they felt about this unique Philadelphia environment.
The Tulsa Golden Hurricane was not the only guest being hosted in South Philadelphia this past weekend. On Friday, the Philadelphia Sports Complex was packed full of events. 3 arenas, all occupied, all at the exact same time. The main event featured the Phillies hosting the San Diego Padres for Game 3 of the NLCS playoffs, with the first pitch coming only 7 minutes after Temple and Tulsa kicked off in the Link.
It's Red October, the Phillies in the playoffs, so much as I want to support my Owls, this is once in, it's been a decade.
With Temple looking for its first conference win and the Phillies trying to break a World Series drought, right across the street, the Smashing Pumpkins, alongside Jane's Addiction, were performing at Wells Fargo Center only a half an hour prior.
So we decided to come to Smashing Pumpkins concert, but I'm gonna keep following the game, make sure they're winning.
The Philly Sports Complex is absolutely packed right now with Phillies, Temple, and music fans, and even has a Ferris wheel outside of Citizens Bank Park.
But this didn't stop fans from coming together to celebrate in each other's parking lots. Across these lots, the fans were mixed together and even had a significant number of Phillies fans taking over K-Lot, where the Owls usually tailgate.
We got the memo from Arthur Johnson. He said, get down here early. We did. Evidently, the Philly fans did too.
The energy here is absolutely incredible. Obviously, go Eagles. They're playing great as well. So for the city, everything's great. Now we need to do our part and join in and get a win tonight against Tulsa.
Although Tulsa got that first conference win over Temple, the Phillies took down the Padres and now will be advancing to the World Series in the first time in 13 years, where they'll take on the Houston Astros on Friday for Game 1 out of 7.
And Sam, you were there for all the action. Was there a specific moment that really stood out to you around the Philadelphia Sports District?
Overall, that experience was absolutely amazing, especially seeing all the fans there for multiple reasons. You saw Temple fans wearing Phillies jerseys at the Wells Fargo Center, all the Phillies and K-Lot, and, you know, like just seeing, like we even got to meet some Owl Sports Updates fans. Shout out to Michael and your family if you're watching, but also the Ferris wheel was also really cool, seeing all the lots at the top of the wheel. It's not often that you get to see a playoff team playing right next to your school team.
Absolutely, it seemed like a lot of fun.
All right, that's Sam Mazid. Thank you, Sam. She was live outside of Lincoln Financial Field where the energy was evident Friday night. But now it's time to take a look at some of the key plays that went down inside of the Link on Friday night.
Let's take a look at this one. Tulsa fakes the handoff right here. Bryn throws directly into the hands of Leighton Jordan for a pick six. He takes this one 34 yards down into the end zone. Let's take another look. Keelan Stokes on Tulsa's already in motion right here. Leighton Jordan picks up on him, but he also reads Bryn like a book. He takes this one all the way down for his second career pick six.
Now this put Temple ahead, but fast forward to later in the game. Temple trailing 17-10, under 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. This is a crucial 3rd down and 7 for Temple at their own 45-yard line. You can play it right here. One of the biggest plays of the game, and Temple's discombobulated. 4 different guys in motion at the same time. The Owls don't know what to do. They use their first time out of the half. They come out with the 3rd down play. They drew it up. This is one of the biggest plays, and nobody's open. E.J. Warner forced to scramble. It's not something he's entirely used to, but give him credit, he does get a yard on the play. Now you can pause it right here. The Owls send the offense back out for 4th down. It was a big play that made sense that if they wanted to go for it, their offense had struggled in this game. They finally got near midfield, might as well push it along. But what you don't see here is the play clock was under 5 by the time Temple came out of this huddle. They were not ready to run this play. You can play it right here. And again, Temple not sure what they're going to do, so they call their second time out of the half. And you'd expect the offense to come back on the field since they used that second timeout, but no, you see Mackenzie Morgan, the punter, trot onto the field. It was a mistake, in my opinion, using both of those timeouts, and the Owls got burned for it later when Tulsa was running the clock out and Temple only had 1 timeout left. So now we haven't seen Temple in too many of these close second halves this season, which puts this week's late game play calling and execution mistakes under the microscope. Inside the Nest reporter Jake Gable is live at the studio set to take a deep dive into what went wrong for Temple. Hey, Jake.
Hey, Luke. It's been over a month now since Temple last won a game. And as you might know, Philadelphia isn't exactly the most patient city. So if the Owls want to get back in the win column, they need to start correcting their repeated mistakes. The first thing the Owls need to fix is their 3rd down offense. Temple converts on just 28% of 3rd downs, which is last in the conference and bottom 10 in the nation. Last game, the Owls went 4 for 18 on 3rd down. The problem starts with their early downs, however. 15 out of the 18 3rd downs that the Owls faced were on 3rd and 6 or longer. The best way for Temple to help itself is to gain yards on early downs so they aren't stuck in these 3rd and long situations. On to my next point, which can also help those 3rd down troubles I just mentioned, the offensive play calling. Temple needs to balance its offense. Temple had 74 offensive plays against Tulsa. They had 48 pass attempts and just 26 rush attempts. During this 3-game losing streak, the Owls have had more passes than rushes in each game. I don't think it's a coincidence that in the Owls' only 2 wins, Temple ran the ball more than it passed. My last point has to do with E.J. Warner's accuracy on throws. Warner completed under 50% of passes against Tulsa. That's the second time in the past 3 games Warner has had a completion percentage under 50. Warner ranks second to last among starting quarterbacks in the American in completion percentage. Luke and Emily, can you guess who has the lowest?
Jake, I'm going to guess it's the quarterback Temple's going to see next week, Ty Lavatai from Navy.
And I'd expect a team that runs the ball 80% of the time to not have a successful pass game. I'm also going with Lavatai.
Luke and Emily, you're both right on the money. Lavatai completes less than 47% of his passes. Got to make the question harder for you guys next time.
Thanks for the trivia question, Jake. We're looking forward to that next one. Now, we're up against our first break, but when we come back, it's Stan Drayton's weekly news conference.
But Drayton is nowhere to be found. We'll explain why the head man is MIA when Inside the Nest continues. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. After a disappointing 11-point loss to the Golden Hurricane, we were expecting to hear from Stan Drayton, but he was out of this week's presser with the flu.
Chief of Staff Everett Withers sat in Drayton's place Monday afternoon to dissect the Tulsa loss and look ahead to Navy.
Like Rich just said, Coach Drayton is under the weather, a little bit of a viral, whatever's going on around here now with the flu and all that. So he's been under the weather a little bit the last couple of days, expecting back here the next day or so, back to the EO in the building, and looking forward to getting him back in the building. From the ball game Friday night, you know, obviously, you want to go win the game. We had a great week of practice with our players. Thought our guys did a nice job of preparing during the week. Obviously, we didn't get the outcome we wanted. You know, there's some factors in there that really were good on our part. And we were really good on defense on third down. I think we held them to 2 of 11, something like that on third down. But we weren't good on offense. We were something like 3 or 4 of 18. So. In turn, that's a little bit of a wash. We didn't have, you know, we had 1 turnover there at the end of the game. So we took care of the ball on offense. Defensively, we caused some turnovers. Obviously, the big interception in the first quarter, 2 big interceptions, 1 for a touchdown early in the game, gave us a lot of momentum. But anytime you give up on 7 explosive plays, over 200 yards rushing, that's not going to help you win a ball game. So we've got to fix that on defense. Our guys know that. We've talked about that. Well, like I said, I think it was 210 plus yards on 7 explosive plays. And every one of those 7 plays was a missed assignment. So when you play a team like Navy, you have to be assignment sound on every snap. So that's a big emphasis for us this week. We've got to eliminate those missed assignments on defense to stop the run, obviously. And that's any week. That's not just for Navy. That's any and every week. So we had some positives in that game defensively, but you don't want to give up those explosive plays because it's hard to overcome those explosive plays. Yeah, when you play teams like, you know, the academies, it's important that you get off to a good start. It's important that you're able to get to a position where you can score touchdowns and not field goals. You know, in a normal game, there's somewhere between 11 and 13 possessions. When you play the academies, you might get 9 or 10. So you got to be very, very intentional when you have the ball on offense. And we've got to do a good job of being able to get points scored, touchdowns, not field goals, because you may not see the ball as much as you normally would in a normal ball game.
Part 1 of Everett Withers' presser, and what do you take from the new perspective?
So Withers said that when you go up against teams like the academies, it's important to start off strong and really focus on scoring. He said that when you go up against, you know, collegiate teams that aren't within the academies, you get usually 12 to 13 possessions, but when you go up against teams like Navy, you usually get 9 to 10. So Temple's going to really need to focus on that run game that Navy has, and really just optimize on all of these offensive opportunities that are going to be thrown at them.
That run defense is going to be so important, and we talked about it earlier after the highlights, but this is a Navy team, again, that leads the conference in rushing, and when Withers looked back at this past game and what went wrong, he kind of echoed the same sentiment as Stan Drayton. He said it wasn't an effort problem, it was missed assignments, and Temple cleaned up those missed assignments after the UCF game. In the passing game, I expect them to clean up those missed assignments in the running game going into the Navy game. So now we'll move on to part 2 of the presser, where Withers discusses defending Navy's scary triple option offense and Temple's lack of execution so far this season.
And on offense, we got to score touchdowns. We were in the red zone or high red zone several times the other night and didn't get many points. And we've got to do better. You know, we can't expect to win games and only score 7 points on offense. Well, you know, I think one thing offensively, I think you're starting to see some things improved. We're not there yet. I mean, I honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say that. But we're having some guys, you know, step up. Ahmad Anderson stepped up this past week, had a, big game, made some plays for us this week. We've just got to have some consistency in what we do. It's not the scheme, okay? And people want to talk about schemes, and it's not the scheme. It's execution of that scheme. And we just got to do a better job of executing the scheme. It's what we're having right now is a breakdown by a different guy within a play. And it's keeping us from continuing drives and moving forward and getting the ball in the end zone. We're close, and our guys know they're close. So we just got to continue to hammer on and execute better. Well, I don't believe it's coming from we've been here since January, so I think it's just a matter of guys just understanding the value of job description and getting job description done. And I don't want to sit here and put it on the players all too. Coaches coach, so we've got it. That's the coach's job. I learned from a great coach one time that said, it ain't that player, it's that coach. So it's the coach's job to get that done. And we just got to continue to hammer it every day. One day it'll sink in, and when it does, there'll be some points on the board. We just got to continue to work at it. I'm very, very, very impressed. Very impressed at how he attacks the game. I've been around some quarterbacks, and always the really good ones are in the building as much as the coaches, and he is. He's in this building as much as any coach, and he's always in that video room watching tape. So he really takes the approach of taking the information that he gets in meetings to the practice field, to the games. And I like the way and obviously he's been in that family that I'm sure Dad has kind of helped him with that, but I think a lot of that's him. And he's a competitive guy, and you have to have that competitive spirit about you. And but he's very knowledgeable for a young kid, so the future's bright for him.
That was part 2 of the press conference. Luke, what did you take from it?
I think the thing that stood out to me the most was when Withers was asked if the scheme needs to change to help the players, he immediately said no, that the players have to execute better, and he wouldn't put the blame on the coaches. Now, he walked it back a bit later saying, it's on everybody, but I think seeing it from a new perspective and hearing Withers' honesty, that was something that we need to watch out for.
And Withers gave his perspective on E.J. Warner. We always get it from Stan Drayton, but it's nice to get a new perspective on him. He said that he's just attacking this game. He's constantly in Edberg-Olsen Hall, studying film, doing what he needs to do best to be good on this field. And he said that the best guys, this is something that stood out to me, he said that the best guys are always in the building, Edberg-Olsen, as much as the coaches are. So that's awesome that he said that. So from one quarterback to another, we'll get some insight on this Navy quarterback, Ty Lavataille, when Luke and I bring in Bill Wagner. Bill covers Navy football for Capital Gazette Communications and has been with the newspaper for over 30 years. He also serves as a beat reporter for other athletic teams at the Academy and is a lead editor for Navy Sailing. In addition to going behind enemy lines with Bill, we'll whip out the toolbox for Temple's 4th conference game of the season.
We'll also take a look at one of Navy's best defensive players at a unique position when Inside the Nest returns.
Welcome back. Last season, the Owls lost to Navy 38-14 at home. This week, the Owls will be on the road, and winning away will be hard, especially for a Temple program that has won only 1 road game since the 2019 season.
The Owls head to Annapolis looking for their first win at Navy since 2018, when quarterback Anthony Russo led Temple to a 24-17 victory.
Now, while Temple is searching for its first conference win, Navy is currently 2-3 in AAC play. The team is historically always on its feet. Navy averages 247 rushing yards per game, and that's good enough for 4th in the nation. Junior quarterback Ty Lavataille has thrown for over 700 yards and rushed for 279 yards on the year, which is actually not a lot for a Navy quarterback. Previous Navy QBs like Malcolm Perry and Keenan Reynolds are also known for their big breakaway speed, but Lavataille is not as dynamic in that sense. The midshipmen are coming off an 18-point loss to the Houston Cougars, a team that is 2-1 in conference play.
Now, when we take a look at the numbers, these teams don't look too different in their conference rankings, but Temple is trailing in some key areas. Despite being in the bottom 2 teams in the conference in scoring, Temple is still 6 points behind Navy in points per game. Navy leads the conference in time of possession, mainly due to its rush-heavy, clock-controlling offense. Temple does hold the pass rush advantage, second in the conference and second in the country in sacks per game, trailing only Cincinnati.
Now, we looked at Navy's last matchup against Houston and compared the teams to Temple's numbers. Now it's time to focus strictly on this Navy team, specifically on both sides of the ball.
Now I'm going to start on the defensive side. I'm looking at John Marshall, the senior outside linebacker, which is also known as the striker position at Navy. Marshall leads the team with 51 tackles and 7.5 tackles for loss. He's also a great pass rusher, second on the team with 3 sacks and a pair of QB hits this season. His ability to drop back into coverage makes him even better. He's truly an all-around player that Temple's going to need to game plan around in this game.
Now, if you're familiar with academy teams like Navy, it runs the ball over 80% of the time because its players have to maintain a certain weight due to military guidelines. The O-linemen can't be as big as they are at other schools, so the triple option is the best way to stay competitive. This could be a good thing or a bad thing for Temple. If Navy takes an early lead, the team will be able to run the ball and control the clock. But the good news is Temple's defense is typically built around its line and its linebackers, so if they execute on run defense, they can stop the midshipmen on the ground.
Now, Emily and I looked at this dynamic triple option from afar, so this week we talked to someone who'd seen the offense up close for decades.
We spoke with Bill Wagner of the Capital Gazette to get an insider look at the ins and outs of this Navy team. This week's edition of Behind Enemy Lines starts right now.
Navy's offense has been struggling for most of the season, so I think if Navy gets into the 30s, it wins this game.
We hear so much about Navy's offense with the triple option, but I want to look over at the defense. Who's a guy that stands out on that side of the ball that Temple's going to have to watch out for?
The defensive line has been outstanding. You'll see that Navy ranks as one of the top rushing defenses in the country, and that starts up front with nose guard Donald Berniard Jr. They nickname him Biscuit. And then the inside linebackers, which rounds out the front 7, which is really what's most responsible for run defense. And the outside linebackers, got to give them some mention as well. This guy, John Marshall, you'll notice he is very active in both the pass rush and run defense, a real versatile player, kind of like a big safety. So those guys have been the keys for defense for Navy.
Now, Temple has faced multiple offenses with quarterbacks who can use their legs on the ground. What makes Lavatai stand out as a threat on his feet?
To be honest with you, that has been a problem for Navy. Navy needs the quarterback to be a running threat. And unfortunately, Ty Lavatai is not a very dynamic runner. He's a big guy, 6'2", 240, and he should be a little bit better as a power runner between the tackles, almost like a second fullback. He's not real dynamic. He's had one good rushing game against SMU. He was at 128 yards. That's a career high. Unfortunately, he's averaging about 45 yards a game, and that's not good enough to get it done in the option.
Now, when these teams played last year, Navy dominated, winning 38-14. I want to know, are there any significant changes from that Navy team last season?
Temple is a team that Navy's kind of dominated this series since joining the American Athletic Conference. I was surprised when I saw that Navy has already been installed as a 2-touchdown favorite. That's a little higher than I would have expected considering the struggles Navy's had in 2 straight losing games here. So it'll be interesting. But yes, Navy has had Temple's number over the years.
And do you have an overall game score prediction heading into this conference matchup?
I believe the defense can hold Temple to somewhere in the range of between 20 and 30 points. So I think if Navy can get 31, 35 points, they win this game. So let's say Navy wins 31-24.
Now that we've learned more about Navy's strengths and weaknesses, it's time to look over at Temple's path to success.
It's time to check out what tools are in Temple's toolbox heading into week 4 of AAC play. Start us off with a good one, Luke.
Now, my first tool is for the Owls to get ahead early. It's something they've done a few times this year, and Emily mentioned it. If Navy takes an early lead, they can run the ball even more than they already do and control the clock from start to finish. Temple needs to get an early lead to force Navy to get uncomfortable and throw the ball. I'll take my chances with Jalen McMurray and Alex Odom in the secondary against Navy's passing offense any day of the week.
Tool number 2 is keep your composure. This Temple team is usually very level-headed and focused on the game. This week felt very different. There were multiple instances where Tulsa players, especially linebacker Ethan Hall, were picking fights throughout the game. Tulsa was getting reactions out of the Owls and causing them to make self-inflicted mistakes. Temple needs to ignore these attempts and continue to make effective plays. Outside factors should never play a role when it's game time.
My third tool is to continue feeding Edward Sadie. Sadie's 69 rushing yards against Tulsa was the most by an individual player for Temple this season. Now, it's not the greatest number, but if the Owls can find similar or maybe even added success from the run game, it stops the offense from being one-dimensional and predictable. It won't be easy because Navy does have the best run defense in the American, but it's something Temple has to try in order to make things easier on E.J. Warner.
Last tool for today, trust your defense. When Temple's defense is on, it's the strongest part of this team. The Owls went for it on 4th down multiple times throughout the game, and although I do like the aggressive play calls, if you plan on going for it, you have to convert. Instead of punting the ball on multiple drives and trusting in the defense to shut down Tulsa's offense, the Owls were giving Tulsa great field position and giving up points on the board. 4 tools for 4 weeks of conference play on October 29th. We'll see if the Owls put these tools to use when they travel to Annapolis for Navy Senior Day. We are also making the trip to Annapolis, so look for our in-person coverage on Saturday with Jake Gable and Hayden Bandel on our social channel at Owl Sports Update. Kickoff is set for 3:30, and you can watch at home on CBS Sports Network or listen in on 97.5 The Fanatic. Now coming up, we have 3 questions and 40 seconds to answer each.
Plus, we'll bring it around broad in this week's edition of No Huddle when Inside the Nest returns.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. It's time for our favorite weekly segment. 3 questions, 40 seconds for each, and we have a timer to prove it.
It's time to go No Huddle.
All right, first question. Would you have gone for the 2-point conversion late in the 4th quarter, trailing by 8?
I think it comes down to trusting your offense, and if you trust the offense to convert like Stan Drayton did, the Owls could have been in a position to win the game with a stop and another score. But I know Stan Drayton said analytics ruled this decision, but with how much the offense struggled, I wouldn't have gone for it.
I agree. I appreciate Drayton's optimism, but he needs to make those decisions that will win games because, like you said, the offense has been inconsistent all season. Not getting the conversion made it an uphill battle for the Owls since they still needed to score a touchdown to make the game close.
Now let's move it over to question 2. Has your confidence level changed with E.J. Warner as the season's gone on, now about halfway through?
Absolutely not. These losses are not entirely EJ's fault. Yes, he can be inaccurate and get flustered at times, but he's an 18-year-old freshman quarterback for a Division I school learning on the job. As Everett Withers mentioned, Warner is always watching film and trying to better his style. The offense needs to trust him and his quarterback abilities.
I'm with you. We see things like the interceptions going up and the completion percentage going down, but it's so hard to evaluate a guy like E.J. Warner when so many things are changing around him. The offensive line changes every week. He had a new receiving corps this past week. Ian Stewart was injured. Adonicus Sanders could be injured going forward. A lot of things have gone wrong for E.J. Warner, but with how I've heard about his work ethic and seeing him take big hits to deliver throws, I'm confident in Warner going forward.
You missed the clock there, bud. Luke and Sam tried to shake up our score predictions last week by picking Temple to win, and that didn't work out well. And now we have just one undefeated person, and that's Jake. He leads with a 7-0 record. I picked up a game that leaves Luke, Sam, and myself tied up at 6-1.
Now, not only was Emilie right, but her score prediction was just 1 point away from perfection. That's why this week I cheated off her notes in the pre-show meeting.
Did you really?
I did.
Week 4 of conference play calls for perspectives from our crew of 4. Luke, what's your game score prediction going into this week?
I'm taking Navy 23-13. I expect the Temple defense to respond from a bad performance on the rush defense side, just like last week when they responded from bad pass defense against UCF. But the offense hasn't scored more than one offensive touchdown in a game in over a month, and that's not going to change this week.
Now that I'm finally in the running, I gotta go with my head and not my heart. I have Navy going 31-16. The team strategically plays this game using its legs, and it's worked for the past 3 years. This week, I'm not taking any chances. Sam, what do you got?
After last week's loss, I have to play it safe. I'm going Navy 27-21. Temple lost both Adam Klein and Adonicus Sanders to Tulsa, 2 key players on this offense. And if they don't return, it'll only make the Owls' struggling offense even harder to gain points on the board. Jake, what are you thinking?
I'm very tempted to take the Owls in this one. I'll even be traveling to Annapolis for the game, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I have Navy winning 24-20. Navy's biggest strength, its run offense, matches perfectly against the Owls' defense. I do think the Owls' pass game has a chance to have a breakout performance, but getting a win on the road on Navy's senior day might be too much to ask from this young team.
Break time. When we come back, we'll reflect on this season so far and bring in some Temple football experts just in time for a midseason outlook.
We'll inquire with the Inquirer when Inside the Nest returns. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Every week we always go behind enemy lines to get some added perspective, but this week we wanted to talk to some experts in our own backyard.
We welcome in Philadelphia Inquirer writers Javon Edmonds and Caden Steele. Hi guys.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Awesome. It's great to see you here. So a few weeks ago we picked our MVPs so far this season. Luke picked Jordan McGee, I picked Leighton Jordan. Who are you guys going with for your MVPs this season?
Got to go with Leighton Jordan. Coming into the year, didn't really expect Leighton Jordan to have a breakout season. 3 years under Jeff Knowles in the prior tenure. Was more of a rotational player. Came into this year as an expected starter, but 6.5 sacks, tied for 10th in the FBS with Darian Varner, and 2 pick six, including that 35-yarder against Tulsa. Really gave Temple the momentum early in that game. Played really well.
Luke, I can't leave you hanging. I'm going with Jordan McGee. Wears the proverbial green dot for that defense, leads the team in tackles, has 3 sacks on the season. He's the engine that keeps them going, that linebacker core, flies sideline to sideline, and he leads that group. Single-digit member of the leadership committee. I'm going Jordan McGee.
You know we're a team, Javon. We got to stick together. Now Temple's 0-3 in conference play so far this season. Moving forward in AAC play, are there any games that you think Temple can win?
South Florida is the one game, coming into this, the rest of the schedule, 5 games left, they can win because they're last in the conference on defense, 9th on offense. They got a struggling quarterback, but they won't be an easy one necessarily. They only lost by 4 points to Cincinnati, 2 touchdowns to Tulane, so they're definitely going to be a tough fight. And if we remember last year, that was kind of the turning point for Temple. So maybe they got a little revenge on their mind.
I have to echo Caden's sentiment. South Florida, last in total defense, last in scoring defense. Temple 5th and 4th in those respective categories. The problem is Temple's offense runs dead last in both categories in the conference. So it'll be a tight battle, but I think South Florida will be the one where Temple gets a win, and then there's Houston, Cincinnati, East Carolina to finish the season. Can't see that going too well.
All right, last question. From your guys' perspective, is E.J. Warner the future of this Temple football team?
To me, it's tough because it's so much. Luke, I remember listening to you talking about it. It's hard to kind of evaluate where E.J. Warner's at right now. I think he's seen a lot of progress, but there is a quarterback coming in next year's class named Tyler Douglas out of Ocean Township. He's had an incredible season, thrown for 926 passing yards and 10 touchdowns, has rushed for 818 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. He's a dual-threat option. And when you look at a Temple team that has to rebuild an offensive line that's played poorly this year, there might be a situation in the next year or so if they can't rebuild the offensive line where a guy like that who's more of a dual-threat option at 6'2" gives them just more of a ceiling compared to E.J. Warner. So right now, I think it's tough to predict who's the guy going forward.
I think when Douglas comes in, he'll be fine. It's just during Warner's junior season is when that competition will ramp up. But I think it's Warner's job for the next 2 years.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Javon Edmonds, Caden Steele. You can check out their work on the Inquirer. And remember to check out our coverage every week on social media at Owl Sports Update.
For our entire crew, Luke Emilie, Javon Edmonds, and Caden Steele, I'm Emilie Cochran. Have a lovely day, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.